We hope that made you all happy this morning, because that's what we're going to talk about today is hardwiring happiness. Good morning. On behalf of the Center for Counseling and Health Promotion and our director, Dr. Nancy Guibault, I want to welcome you to the Center for Counseling and Health Promotion Convocation. My name's Diane Detloff, and I work at the counseling office as the administrative assistant, and I do health promotion outreach. We are really excited to have you here today to attend our convocation to hear Dr. Rick Hansen. The Center for Counseling and Health Promotion has been doing and part of the convocation series for 9 years now, we believe. It has been our intention in CCHP to provide a diverse group of speakers to share their expertise, wisdom, and thoughts on topics regarding health and well-being. Today we're happy to have this convocation being taped by Minnesota Public Radio. Slides for the presentation can be found on a link on your programs. We have time set aside for questions and answers at the end of the presentation. We ask that you wait till someone comes to you with the microphone, speak clearly and slowly so that we can all hear your questions. Please complete the blue evaluation forms, which are on your chairs or you got as you came in. If you do need to leave at the end of the presentation early, the next class period starts at 12:10. We ask that you do so quietly because we are taping this for broadcast. Please silence your cell phones or put them on vibrate. Dr. Hansen's book, Hardwiring Happiness, is available in the bookstore for purchase after the convocation. And at this time, I would like to introduce Fran Drazen, an Augie senior, majoring in sociology with a minor in psychology, hailing from New Prague, Minnesota. Fran is here at Augsburg is active here at Augsburg as an AugSem student leader, as well as one of our student workers. She recently co-facilitated the LGBTQIA leadership retreat. She's been active with QPA as well as co-president of the Feminist Collective. Her post-Augsburg aspirations are to gain some work experience before going to grad school. Please help me welcome Fran Drazen, who will introduce Dr. Rick Hansen.
Thank you, Diane. I am so delighted to have the opportunity to introduce Rick Hansen this morning, a neuropsychologist, senior fellow of the Greater Good Science Center at UC Berkeley. Hansen is a New York Times best-selling author. His books include Hardwiring Happiness, Buddha's Brain, Just One Thing, and Mother Nurture. You may also be familiar with his well-known TED Talk, focusing on the hidden power of everyday experiences on the modern brain, or his free Just One Thing newsletter, which has 100,000 subscribers. He is the founder of the Wellspring Institute for Neuroscience and Contemplative Wisdom. He's been an invited speaker at Oxford, Stanford, and Harvard, and taught in meditation centers worldwide. We are fortunate to have Rick here with us today at Augsburg. Already this morning, he's had the opportunity to speak with Augsburg students, including myself, and as well as the CCHP staff. Dr. Hansen will enlighten us all in ways to turn passing experiences into lasting inner strength and peace. Please help me welcome our speaker, Rick Hansen, on Hardwiring Happiness.
Thank you very, very much. It's really a pleasure to be here, and I can add Augsburg College to the list of places where I've been invited. Oxford, Stanford, Augsburg, UC Berkeley. It's good. Anyway, a word about myself. I'm a psychologist and a methods guy. I think of what I do as really practical. I produce a little bit of research, but mostly I consume it and apply it. So I want to talk with you here today about basically what does it actually take to grow the good inside ourselves, to grow toughness, determination, compassion, happiness, gratitude, love. What does it take to grow that inside ourselves? That's my fundamental focus here. And if you walk away with one practical thing you can do in everyday life to turn passing experiences into some kind of lasting resource woven into your own brain, that'll be a good convocation as far as I'm concerned. So I'll hold forth a bit, and then roughly at about a quarter to the hour, we'll open it up for discussion. Objections? questions, situations, nightmare scenarios. You know, I have a background somewhat in meditation, as they say in the monastery. Think you're so enlightened, go home for the holidays, right? So I like stuff that's real in the trenches. So to introduce this topic, I want to tell a story that I heard. You may have heard this story in different forms. The form in which I heard it was that a woman, Native American First People, woman was asked toward the end of her life, "Grandmother, how did you become so happy? How did you become so effective, so wise, so loved? What did you do?" She paused, she reflected for a moment, and she said, "You know, I think it's because when I was young, I realized that in my heart were two wolves, one of love and one of hate. And I also realized that everything depended upon which one I fed each day." It's so true. Two takeaways. One is acknowledging the presence in almost everyone's heart, certainly my own heart, of the so-called wolf of hate. The capacity for prejudice, for ill will, envy, violence, war. Okay. Also, more relevant for our purposes here, the takeaway point that we're always feeding one wolf or another. Which wolf will we feed? We'll see in a moment, our experiences are constantly changing our brain, one way or another. What are we growing there? The wolf of hate, the wolf of love, as well as other things like resilience, self-confidence, feeling worthy, feeling lovable, feeling like a good person, having more empathy for others, having more insight into others. Are we growing those as well? How do we grow those things? How do we get the good stuff, basically in a nutshell, in our brain? So that's what I want to talk about here. There's a fancy term, experience-dependent neuroplasticity. The takeaway phrase from the work of the Canadian psychologist Donald Hebb is neurons that fire together, wire together. I swear I'm going to create some kind of like rap video with that, fire together, wire together, but people pay me not to sing. But maybe some of you could like send me that video, I could post it, and a lot of people would see it. Neurons that fire together, wire together. In other words, it's weird what we think, what we feel, what we hope, what we suffer, what we long for, what we intend, what we dream, is constantly changing the structure of the brain. Any kind of mental activity, any kind of thought, any kind of hope, any kind of sadness, any kind of joy is involving underlying neural activity. And repeated patterns of underlying neural activity gradually change neural structure and function. Let me give you a couple of examples. One is London taxi cab drivers. I love this example because it's so down to earth. They have to memorize the spaghetti snarl of streets in London, which involves using a part of the brain called the hippocampus, which is involved in visual spatial memory and other important things. Well, at the end of their training, memorizing all those streets, their hippocampus is measurably thicker. It's like, metaphorically, working a muscle. They engaged a particular part of the brain again and again and again, and that part of the brain got thicker. It grew tissue there. A different example is people who routinely do something contemplative, prayerful or meditative. One study done on long-term mindfulness meditators, people who are tuning into breathing, found that these people also had measurably bigger brains, in a sense, measurably thicker cortex in two key regions. One region called the insula, where they tuned into themselves. That made sense. They kind of worked that muscle again and again and grew it. And then another part of the brain, the prefrontal regions just behind the forehead, that are involved in the top-down regulation of attention, impulses, and feelings. Also what you do when you meditate, that part of the brain, too, grew. It was measurably thicker. So those are two good examples. On the other side of the street, the brain is constantly changing its structure, one way or another, right? We're constantly feeding one wolf or another. People who are repeatedly stressed, frazzled, upset, or even traumatized, gradually sensitize and even thicken and grow a different part of the brain called the amygdala, which is like the alarm bell of the brain. And so now, potentially in a vicious cycle, lots of stressful experiences, especially moderate to severe chronic stressful experiences, now make their brains more reactive to stress and less able to recover from it. Either way, we're feeding one wolf. Which wolf will we feed? So I want to talk about how to change the brain for the better in lasting ways, because you really can use your mind to change your brain, to change your mind for your own benefit and for the benefit of other beings. How do we actually do it? So I want to teach you a really simple two-step process for doing it. And I thought I could introduce this with this little practice after they correct my technology here. What's that John Lennon line? Life is what happens to you while you're making other plans. You know, my plan was to give this talk with effortless AV, and hey, life happened, right? That's okay. All right. How's that? Can you hear me okay? So, I want to put this in context. The brain has what's called a negativity bias. Or as I put it, it's like Velcro for the bad, but Teflon for the good. Let's think about a relationship, right? 10 things happen in that day with this person. It's an important person in your life. Maybe it's someone you work with. Maybe it's someone you do athletics with. Maybe it's someone you live with. Maybe it's someone you sleep with. In my case, all four, right? My wife, but anyway. And let's say 10 things happen with that person. 9 are positive, 1's negative. What's the one you tend to think about before you go to sleep? It's the negative. Maybe you're in a class. Your teacher gives you, 5 pieces of feedback plus 1 room for improvement. What's the one you think about? It's the room for improvement. People tend to remember negative information about other people more than positive information, thus attack ads in politics. There actually are dedicated circuits in the brain involving the stress hormone cortisol that gradually sensitizes our brain to the negative so that it gets more and more reactive to it over time. This tendency, this very well established negativity bias in the brain evolved because as our ancestors were living in tough conditions, most animals die in the moment of being eaten. Our ancestors were prey long before they were predators. In that environment, animals need to both get carrots, food, mating opportunities. I joke, I'm going to talk to my wife, hey, honey, how about a mating opportunity? But I never have done that because I knew I'd crash and burn if I ever did that. Anyway, food, mating opportunities, carrots, right? And then over here we have sticks, predators, natural hazards, aggression, inside bands, between bands. All right, both are important. You've got to get carrots, you've got to avoid sticks, but here's the difference. If you fail to get that carrot today, you'll have a chance at a carrot tomorrow. But if you fail to avoid that stick today, no more carrots forever. Thus the negativity bias of the brain. Because sticks, negative events, especially from a raw survival standpoint, have more urgency and more impact than positive experiences. So that's the nature of the brain today. It's very good at learning from bad experiences, but it's relatively bad at learning from good experiences, even though learning from good experiences is the primary way to grow the good inside our brain. In other words, to turn experiences of worth or success or determination or inner toughness, to turn these experiences or experiences of compassion or love or feeling loved, to turn these experiences into lasting resources inside. That's the pathway for growing the good inside ourselves. It's a 2-stage process. We have to move from short-term memory buffers to long-term storage, from state to trait, from activation to installation. So it's when we have activated experiences of confidence, determination, love, feeling cared about, and so forth, we have to have these experiences and then turn them into structure, right? We turn good experiences into good resources, inner strengths inside. Like I said, the brain is good at turning the bad, at learning from the bad, but it's relatively bad at learning from the good, even though learning from the good is the primary way to grow these strengths inside. Now, maybe people are in tough conditions, combat tour, or growing up in a really harsh environment or a crazy family. In those environments, maybe that negativity bias is useful. But in most conditions, it creates a kind of bottleneck in the brain that slows down our learning. We're learning too much from the negative and too little from the positive. And that's a kind of universal, well-intended learning disability, if you think about it, based on having a brain that's designed for peak performance in Stone Age conditions. Now, I want to be really clear here. I don't believe at all in positive thinking. I believe in realistic thinking. I want to see the whole mosaic of reality, the good, the bad, and the neutral, about the world out there and the world in here. It's also true, though, we have a brain that's biased toward constantly looking for bad news, over-focusing upon it, overreacting to it, and then fast-tracking that whole package into emotional memory. That's the nature of the brain. We have a brain that's already tilted toward the negative. If we deliberately become more aware of the ordinary good things in our life, the real good facts in our life, everyday life, and not in a perfect world, and then if we let ourselves actually feel something when we see those good facts, and then if we actually, even more importantly for ourselves, help that experience land inside, then if we tilt in that way, looking for the good facts, helping them become good feelings, and then really taking it in, if we tilt in that way, we're just leveling the playing field, given the negativity bias of the brain, right? So I want to talk with you about how to do it and maybe do a couple little quick things to kind of inside yourself. With the students before we came over here, I was talking about this Mr. Rogers clip you can see on YouTube. You may have seen it. He got a Lifetime Achievement Award at the Emmys. And so he walked into this setting with like 1,000 super ritzy actors and actresses, all made up, all in their deal, you know, a lot of phoniness floating around. I grew up in LA, like I know about phoniness. Okay, so anyway, and so then old Mr. Rogers walks up to the stage and he says, looking out at the crowd, he blows the whole script. Instead of doing the standard stuff, right? Oh, I love you all, blah, blah, blah. He says, you know, we're all in this room today because somebody somewhere loved us. And so I'm going to take 10 seconds now of silence. Can you imagine silence on TV? Like, oh my God, forget silence. I'm going to take 10 seconds of silence. Don't worry, I have a watch, he said in his Mr. Rogers way. You're like, oh. And he said, and what I want you to do is think about someone who loved you. That's it. And then we'll finish up, right? And so you could just watch the faces of the actors and actresses. Initially, they're shocked, like, oh no, uh-oh, something real. Can you believe that? And then they get kind of like, oh, whatever, blah, blah. And then you could see that they really got into it. And at the end of 10 seconds, you know, the room had really changed. So I want to invite you into this yourself. 10 seconds. I do have a watch. I thought we could just pause in silence for 10 seconds and bring to mind, as you can, someone who loves you. And then I'm going to use this little experience as an illustration of the way the brain learns from its experiences and how you can use your everyday experiences, just ordinary stuff in daily life, to change your brain and therefore your life for the better. So you willing to try it? It's okay. All right. 10 seconds, thinking of someone who loves you and trying to help the idea of this person to become a feeling of feeling loved. Okay? 10 seconds. Okay. Sometimes 10 seconds can feel really long. Other times it can feel really short. So you might ask yourself, as you did that little experiment, what happened inside your own mind? Maybe you couldn't do it. Maybe you were distracted. Maybe you could do it. Maybe you started thinking about a person and then you began to feel something. And the longer you were able to have a rich experience of feeling loved or cared about by somebody, even if it's not a perfect relationship, the more you are able to have that experience, the more you are able to get those neurons firing together. And the longer they were firing together, the more you are able to weave that experience, to encode it in some way in neural structure or function. And that's the essence of the neuropsychology of learning, which is fundamentally a two-stage process. It moves from state to trait, as I said before, from activation to installation. We don't have a brain, or at least we don't have technology like they did with Neo in the Matrix, where they plugged a cable into the back of his head and suddenly he could do kung fu or fly a helicopter. They left out the part where he became the world's greatest lover because they wanted to maintain their PG-13 rating. But anyway, our brain is more old school. It's like a cassette recorder. You record the song by playing the song, right? It's not like an iPod where you can just jack it in, okay? In other words, we grow resources inside ourselves. We grow resilience, we grow determination, we grow confidence, we grow self-worth, we grow compassion, we grow mindfulness, we grow insight by having experiences of these inner strengths, which are then learned in some way, bit by bit, synapse by synapse, woven into the fabric of the brain, all right? It's really easy to poo-poo positive experiences. But if you think about it, most inner strengths, most experiences of things like resilience, compassion, feeling loved by somebody, gratitude, determination, commitment to justice, most of these experiences are enjoyable. Their enjoyability is a clue that they're good for us. Not all enjoyable experiences are good for us. That rush of anger, let's say, that kind of with pleasure, there's a certain pleasure in it. That may not be so good for us. That could be kind of problematic. But on the whole, the experiences that are really good for us feel good because as we evolved, Mother Nature wanted our ancestors to seek them out. It feels good to feel kind of calmer, to feel more peaceful. It feels good to recognize that you're basically okay, even in the middle of a crazy situation. It feels good to accomplish things, to score that goal, to win that prize, to get that good grade. Those things feel good. It feels good to be grateful. It feels good to look outside and go, wow, the leaves are kind of amazing here, right? That feels good. It also feels good to feel cared about or to feel caring. Why do those things feel good? They feel good because they're good for us, and Mother Nature wants us to seek them. Does it feel very good to be anxious, worried, or irritated, exasperated? No. Does it feel good to be stressed, to feel stressed? No. Does it feel good to feel like a failure or disappointed or frustrated? Does it feel good to feel embarrassed about yourself or inadequate or lonely? No. Those experiences feel bad because they're bad for us from the standpoint of pure survival, let alone quality of life and long-term health and the lifespan altogether. So it's important to appreciate these points in the context in which we often dismiss enjoyable experiences. La-di-da, that's so California. We had that dude from California. He talked about taking in the good, whatever. It's easy to dismiss him, to push him away. But in fact, the enjoyability of these experiences of inner strengths is a clue. Aha, this one's probably a keeper. So I want to teach you a few ways to keep them, to really help them sink in. So you want to try it? We'll just do a little thing here. Think about something that you're grateful for. Doesn't have to be perfect. Something you feel thankful about, maybe appreciative of or glad about. It could be a simple thing. A friend, your dog, pets are great for this. Could be kind of big and cosmic, the gift of life, being able to be at a college, something you're grateful for. And then as you bring this idea of something you're grateful to mind, see if you can start having kind of a feeling of like, yeah, I'm thankful about that. Yeah, that's one way my life doesn't suck. Good, right? At least one tile in that mosaic of reality altogether that's got some kind of positive stuff, right? I'm grateful for modern technology and audiovisual equipment and people who help me. And don't throw tomatoes. Anyway, I'm grateful for all the bad things I worried about not happening. Ain't dead yet, right? Okay, so thinking of something you're grateful for and then kind of watching your mind and then seeing if you can sort of marinate in it for 10 seconds in a row, 10, 15 seconds in a row. Feeling it, hanging out with it, yum, 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 savoring it, letting yourself have this experience, really, really letting it land inside you. Keeping those neurons firing. This thing you're grateful for. Could be more than one thing. You're kind of exploring, what is gratitude like as an experience? What's it like in my body? And as you do this, you can also get a sense of it sinking in, kind of moving into you like water into a sponge, gratitude, spreading out inside you. It's a keeper. That process we're doing here of sustaining an experience, of actually turning an idea into an experience, and then sustaining it for a dozen or so seconds, that's the key to emotional learning. That's the key to turning these passing experiences into some kind of lasting resource inside. So let's do a different one. Strength. Feeling tough, determined, you can hang in there. Want to try this one? Strength, feeling strong. Calling up a sense of will. Maybe a time you were intense in athletics. I've done a lot of rock climbing, a lot of wilderness activities. Time I was like, pulling over an overhang. Or maybe it's a time you stood up for yourself or stood up for somebody else, a time you felt strong. So right here and right now, if you can, little experiment, see if you can start calling up, activating, getting this song playing so we can record it in your brain even more deeply. A time you felt strong, the feeling right now of being strong. What's it feel like in your body to be determined, to be serious? You mean business. Doesn't mean you're macho or going to war with anyone, but you're determined. You're going to get through this. And as you explore this feeling, notice what it's like in your chest. Does your chest sit up a little straighter? What's your face like when you're determined? When there's maybe a sense of gravity, realness? What are your eyes like? Those linebacker eyes. I'm a football geek. Linebacker eyes, what's that feel like? And as you sustain this experience, as you keep it going, you can also get a sense of strength sinking into you, spreading out inside you, becoming more a part of yourself. And as you do this, I guarantee you, you are heightening the encoding of this experience in your own brain. That's the essence right there of learning from our everyday experiences. But here's the problem. Do we usually do this? Even privately, just kind of on the fly without some dude in the front of the room talking about it, just kind of on our own. How often do we actually do it? Studies show that we're actually often having one positive experience after another, interspersed with neutral ones and the occasional negative experience. Brief experiences, a few seconds long. But the problem is, the new one coming in dislodges the current positive experience before it has time to sift down into long-term storage. Right? We don't savor these experiences. We don't protect them. Or we attack them. We say to ourselves, I don't deserve that. I'm a bad person. Or how can I feel grateful about anything? How could I take a moment to think of someone who loves me? Or call up a sense of strength? How could I do that when people are starving around the world? Right? Or people think to themselves, if I do that, I'll become a wussy. I'll lose my edge. That Dos Equis ad with the most interesting man in the world, stay thirsty, my friends, right? I've got to stay thirsty. And if I let good stuff come in, I won't stay thirsty. Well, and there are other objections as well, But look closely. Is it actually true? If we turn toward experiences of various inner strengths, determination, resilience, feeling cared about, feeling successful, feeling lovable, feeling loved, feeling grateful, feeling insightful, if we turn toward those experiences and don't waste them on the brain, but instead take the extra 5 or 10 seconds or even longer in the privacy of your own mind. No one needs to know you're doing it. If we do those things, do we get weaker? Do we become wussier? Do we lose our edge? I don't think so. That's not what I've seen in my life. That's not what I've seen in other people's lives. And that's not what the research shows. What the research shows, actually, is that the more that people activate ordinary, authentic, we're not making it up. It's not pie in the sky. It's not looking on the bright side. It's not seeing the world through rose-colored glasses. If people activate, they let themselves have various experiences of strengths, including the strength of happiness, of ordinary well-being. If people have those experiences and then really let them sink in, they actually become more resilient. They become tougher, more able to push through hard things, more able to recover from setbacks, more able to heal from an illness because their immune system gets stronger. Their cardiovascular system, their heart, is protected from stress. They actually live longer and they are more successful. They make more money. They have happier relationships. They make more of a contribution in life. Why is that? Because they're more resourced inside. They got more of that stuff inside that they can use for their own sake and for the sake of other people. There's this weird kind of meme floating around that somehow if you're not miserable, you're not paying attention, right? It's not true. It's when we turn toward the authentic positive and actually let it land and let it be real for ourselves that we're more able to deal with our pain, our loss, our worry about our family still living in poverty or here at home or far away. We're also more able to sustain effort in sports, in academics, and in relationships. We're more able to stick up for ourselves and speak the truth to power and speak the truth to other people because we've grown these things inside ourselves. Otherwise, we end up running on empty. So as I think about this, moving toward almost an end, not quite there yet, I want to introduce a basic idea about this, which is if you think about what would be particularly good for you to grow inside yourselves these days, or yourself these days. And as a model of that, I use a little framework from the way the brain evolved. Brainstem, subcortex, cortex, loosely associated with reptile, mammal, primate human stages of evolution. Or to put it a little differently, I don't know about you, but I feel I've got inside myself a little lizard, a little mouse, and a little monkey. All right. As the brain evolved, so did its capacity to meet our 3 fundamental needs, the needs of any animal, broadly defined for safety, satisfaction, and connection. And the way the brain goes about meeting those needs is loosely associated with the lizard, mouse, and monkey stage of evolution. Those lizards were able to feel fear. Fear is probably the very first emotion that was evolved. What's rule 1 in the wild? Eat lunch today. Don't be lunch today. All right? First, live to see the sunrise. Safety trumps other things. We got to take care of our safety needs. And then those little mammals, those little rat-like ancestors who outlived the dinosaurs. Go the rats. They needed to get the cheese, right? They needed to find rewards. And of course, we have primates, and humans, the most social species on the planet. So to kind of summarize all this stuff in a corny but memorable way, what we need to do fundamentally to meet our needs and to look for those experiences that are the basis of internalizing the resources that will help us meet our needs, we need to, in a nutshell, pet the lizard, feed the mouse, and hug the monkey. Not spank the monkey, I know I'm in college, hug the monkey, all right? Meet our relational attaching needs, all right? So that's the way to think about it. And you might think to yourself these days, what am I working with these days? What's a key issue? Is it around safety? Do I feel anxious? Do I feel angry? Do I feel helpless? Do I have a history of trauma? Or maybe more of my issues are around the satisfaction system, approaching rewards. Am I struggling with frustration, disappointment, feeling like I'm hitting a glass ceiling? Have I been prejudiced against, discriminated against, blocked and thwarted in doing what I really need to do. Right? Maybe that's more where the issues are. Or for a different sort of thing, maybe my issues are in the relational system, the social system. I need to hug the monkey more. I need to have more experiences of feeling cared about, of feeling included, appreciated, wanted, seen, and loved. That's where my key supplies are. So you might think for yourself, or for friends, or those you care about, those you teach, those you counsel, what have you, what are those key experiences that are going to do the most for me, including, if you want, this little framework around safety, satisfaction, and connection, lizard, mouse, and monkey. Okay? So then, kind of moving into a wrap here, I want to put this in perspective. What's the most important minute of your life? It's the next one. You can't do anything about the minutes in the past, more than a few minutes in the future. We don't have much influence. The next minute is the most important minute of our life, minute after minute after minute. What will we do with the most important minute of our life? Will we see the good facts that are existent, that are real? If we see them, will we feel anything? And then if we see them and feel something, will we let it sink in? Will we take that extra 5 or 10 seconds to stay with it, to hang out with it, to feel it in the body, to really heighten the encoding in neural structure of that activated state of mind? Or, on the other hand, will we ignore it? Will we do like so many people do as they go through their day? It's as if the path of life is strewn with jewels and we just kind of walk all over them. We don't even see them. And then we never take them in as a result. That's the choice we have, at least a few times a day, with the most important minute of our life. There's a traditional saying in Tibet, if you take care of the minutes, the years will take care of themselves. I like that. That's hopeful to me. I can handle that. Years, I don't know. Minutes, I can deal with. To finish up here, and then I want to see what you think. I want to see if you disagree with any of this stuff. I always like that. Objections, questions, comments, whatever. There's a famous kind of saying in Buddhism, my home tradition. The Buddha said, "Think not lightly of good, saying it will not come to me. Drop by drop is the water pot filled. Likewise, the wise one, gathering it little by little, fills oneself with good." That's the opportunity we have. It's on us to do that. I've been a therapist a long time, and it's made me probably nicer. It's definitely made me tougher. You got to do the work. You got to do the work. You got to look for those good facts, let them become good experiences, and really help them register in your own mind. But if you do that work, at least a few times a day, usually less than half a minute at a time, we're talking less than 5 minutes total, realistically. If you do that work in the most important minute of your life, again and again, you can gradually fill yourself up with good. So, may you and I and all beings, drop by drop, minute by minute, fill themselves with good. And I've filled myself with a lot of good here at Augsburg College. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Yeah, questions, comments. Anybody want to say anything? Raise your hand. Get a microphone. In the back there. Yay, with the microphone. Someone. Thank you. And we'll end exactly at 12, so you can stick around till then. Okay.
So I'm pretty sure all of us have been told at some point that we learn from our mistakes. What would you have to say to that phrase?
Aha. We learn some things from our mistakes. There's a saying in medicine, good judgment comes from experience, and experience comes from bad judgment, right? I've had a lot of experience in life. Okay, we learn from our mistakes. Don't do that. Don't rest your hand on that hot plate. Or, don't go home with that kind of guy, right? We learn from those kind of things. There's a place for that. But if you think about it, how informative is a mistake? A mistake basically says, oh, you missed the bullseye. Well, okay, fine, but where's the bullseye? On the other hand, and there's a lot of evidence for this in performance training and in relationships as well, if you do something that works, right, if you hit the bullseye, Or you do that thing that gets the ball over the plate. Or you do that thing that enables you in football to cover that person more effectively. Or you do that thing in a relationship that helps something tricky go better or manages a situation. Or you do that thing in your own mind that helps things go better. Bing, now you know where the bullseye is. And you actually learn from that kind of opportunity. So, there's a lot of evidence, again, that people need to be corrected, need to have mistakes pointed out. But it's really important to point out good performance or performance that's getting closer, right? It's kind of like that kids game, whatever, how do they call it? You're getting hotter, you're getting colder, If you're getting colder, that doesn't tell you very much. Colder, great, thanks a lot. Hotter, 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 now I know where I'm really going. Don't underestimate the power of positive experiences and positive feedback. Also, like I said earlier, there's this fear that, well, if I really take it in, that you like me or they did a good job, I'm going to become kind of lazy, right? It's almost embarrassing to be seen feeling good about yourself. But actually, feeling good about yourself, not cocky, not arrogant, not a jerk, but feeling basically good about yourself is also really associated with peak performance in athletics, corporate environments, and elsewhere. No, for me, like I said, rock climbing, I could go out and I could watch somebody flail and flame out. I'm not going to learn very much from that. Oh yeah, that was stupid, right? But then I watch these people who are better climbers, they're like human geckos. Now I can do that. That's how to do it. Okay. Another comment or question? Comments, questions? Anything? Yeah?
Can cancer be induced by stress?
Whoa. Can cancer be induced by stress? Stress can be a risk factor because it can weaken the immune system, and the immune system normally is tracking abnormal cells, maybe even precancerous cells. So, we don't want to weaken our immune system. And on the other hand, cancer has many factors and many causes, like environmental toxins or just genetic weaknesses. You might notice this scar on the side of my face. I had a melanoma cancer pulled out of it about 3 weeks ago. And it's not that I've had so little work. This is not like I'm going to have a little nose job or something. This was a cancer. I don't think I got that cancer because I was stressed. I think it's a combination of sun exposure. I grew up in LA around pools, maybe some genetics, something like that. And I think it's important not to blame yourself, right? Like as if it's our fault somehow if we get a disease. But on the other hand, it's that whole thing. What's the most important minute of your life? It's gradual accumulation of the good that takes us to a good place, and it's usually the gradual accumulation of the bad that takes us to a bad place. And one last thing that, I don't know, maybe it's motivating or not, but it's true. Stress is bad for the complexion because stress will give you pimples. So if that helps you motivate yourself to be more regulated inside your own mind, that's a good motivator. So thanks for that. Thanks for that. Yeah, there's a place for a little bit of stress, okay? We're tough monkeys. It's okay. But stress, there's a difference between being challenged and being fierce and fiery and passionate. There's a difference between that and being burdened by tons of negative emotion. Self-criticism, I suck, I feel like a failure, you suck, life sucks. That's not good for us. You see the difference? It's okay to be alive, to be challenged, to be fierce, to be committed, to be engaged. But when we tip into anxiety or anger or hurt or frustration, that's when the body gets worn down, the mind gets worn down, and over time our performance gets worn down as well. Okay. Where? Yeah, I'm good.
So
Thanks.
you've alluded to that throughout the lifetime. You've noticed the study in your research that there was an increased density in these areas. Have you seen anything in either one of two cases that a particular lifestyle produced a quicker outcome of this? Or the second part would be, have you noticed between generations, is this something that your offspring can build off of. If you've developed these increased densities within these specific regions, would then your children have some likely predisposition to gaining that established region quicker?
Yeah.
Or do they have to retrain all over again every single generation?
Okay, so two-parter, and I'll answer real briefly and kind of make it practical if I can. So with regard to the first part of the question, the more we practice, the more we do, does tend to change the brain more readily, one. Two, neural structure is, the formation of new structure, is really promoted by a neurotransmitter called dopamine, which follows rewards. So the more we experience that something is rewarding, that we're trying to learn from, that it's enjoyable, that's going to increase synaptic formation, dopamine. Another neurotransmitter called norepinephrine also promotes synaptic formation, getting these things to wire together. And norepinephrine is involved when you're alert, when you're kind of energized. So I think to myself, as a parent, a teacher, therapist, so forth, when people are all kind of half asleep, whatever, no learning's going on. It's when we feel rewarded. Yeah, that's good. Okay, it's rewarded. That promotes a lot of learning and also feeling alert and energized. So those are lifestyle factors, you could think of it, that would promote learning throughout your own brain. So that would be one, okay? Two, alcohol kills brain cells, right? We lose roughly 10,000 brain cells a day, normally. Now, you start with 1.1 trillion. That's a lot of brain cells. So typically you've lost, a few percent by your 70th birthday. But I got bad news for you, all right? And I say this as a guy who likes to drink too. One drink, one shot, 4 ounces of wine, that's half a cup, one beer, also kills 10,000 brain cells. It does so by depriving brain cells of oxygen. That buzz we get is the feeling of brain cells drowning, right? So I don't mean to rain on the parade. We can handle a little bit of it, but it is a lifestyle factor that is worth paying attention to, all right? Point one. Sorry to give you the bad news, but anyway. Point two, it's also true that there are these things called epigenetics, gene expression, which is a very cool area of research. And there is beginning to be some evidence that the ways in which we experience things changes the expression of genes inside our own brain. Okay, genes, as you know, are little strips of atoms in the twisted up molecule of DNA. If you untwisted a molecule of DNA, it would be about 6 feet long. Isn't that crazy? But all twisted up, it's microscopic. But anyway, for those genes to do their work, they've got to be unpacked so they can be effective. And the tendencies that are developed in us, like for example, people who routinely practice relaxation, including related to mindfulness training. Mindfulness training is to the mind what aerobic exercise is to the body. It's a fundamental form of practice. And I understand there's some mindfulness groups here at school. A lot of research shows. I tell you, if Big Pharma, Merck, Pfizer, et cetera, could patent mindfulness training based on the solid evidence for its benefits for long-term physical and mental health, we'd be seeing ads for people going all zen every night on TV. I'd still think we'd see Viagra ads, but maybe fewer ads for Prozac. But anyway, okay, so my point was, I think, yes, people who routinely practice relaxation or meditation and whatnot have improved expression of genes that calm down the stress response. They help us move back out of the red zone, right, and kind of recover and become more resilient as a result. And these changes, these epigenetic changes, the genes don't change, but their expression changes. These changes, new evidence is showing, can be passed down the generations, independent of other pathways of transmission, cultural or psychological pathways of transmission. There's a biblical saying, I'll probably mangle it. It's something like, the fathers have eaten sour grapes, and the teeth of the children are set on edge. Something like that. So it's not the only way that effects pass down, but hypothetically, We might advantage our children and our grandchildren and our great-grandchildren by doing healthy things, in the middle of a real life. Like watch TV, relax, have fun. It's college, right? You're supposed to do that. But meanwhile, along the way, and this will be maybe a point I'll approach an end on, how much do you learn each day? I don't mean like school learning. You're going to forget almost all of it. It's a dirty secret, but it's true. But emotional learning, attitudinal learning, social learning, that's the stuff that sticks to our ribs. Okay, a day goes by. What'd you learn that day? Did you learn anything at all? What was the gain over that period of time? And that little gain, I went to bed a little more skillful socially, a little more skillful with my own mind. I went to bed feeling a little bit better about who I am. I went to bed being a little stronger in my own heart, a little more determined. That gain, maybe small that day, but bit by bit, minute by minute, drop by drop, that increment, that delta over time determines whether a person's learning curve through life or path through life is kind of flat, or somehow people kind of decline. That's not good. Or instead of that, maybe it's kind of shallow. Or if you really try to maximize your learning every day, right? Especially your emotional learning, your social learning, your motivational learning, attitudinal learning, spiritual learning, then over time, whoop, your path through life is more like that. And that's based on those little things each day, 1 minute at a time, that really add up to something big over the course of a lifespan. Maybe one more question or comment, please.
As a guru in the area of happiness, what are your biggest challenges? And you've talked about a lot of things that we all can do to be better at being happy. What are your specific challenges, and what have you found that works best for you?
Oh, thank you. Well, first, I'm nobody's guru. I've seen gurus, and the bigger they come, the harder they fall. So I'm going to steer really clear of that, But I have tried to learn a lot about this for myself and for others as well, so thank you for that. One thing I've learned is do not underestimate the power of the dark side of the force. In other words, don't underestimate, because of the negativity bias, how absorbent our brain is. And let's be clear, we can be feeling something negative. We're anxious, we're upset, we're in pain, we're sad, we're hurt, we're concerned about others, somebody does something to us. I'm not talking about suppressing that at all. I don't want you to be alarmed about that. The difference, though, is, am I sucked into it? Am I hijacked by it? Am I a puppet being played by those strings? Or can I step back and observe it? It's sometimes called observing ego, mindful awareness, the witness position. It's like, instead of being glued to the horror film, Chucky, I'm 20 rows back with popcorn going, whoa, that looks weird, that's intense, That makes all the difference in the world. That's point one. I'm less indulgent of my self-criticism, my grumbling resentments about others, my woulda, coulda, shouldas, because I realize neurons are firing together, wiring together. I'm sucking that negativity, that poison, into my own brain. There's a saying in Alcoholics Anonymous, resentment is like taking poison and waiting for others to die. Right? It's kind of like taking that into my brain. So that's one big takeaway for me. Second big takeaway is to look for those little opportunities to register something pleasant, to not ignore it, and then life starts feeling, even in a tough life starts feeling like this fantastic opportunity, to just recognize good facts, have a good feeling, have a good experience, and then take it in as a result, that one. And then the last thing, and maybe this will be a good place to end here, to look for, I use that little lizard, mouse, and monkey metaphor, to look for those key experiences that for you these days are high value. Speaking of myself, I grew up in a, kind of middle class environment. I wasn't traumatized, I wasn't beaten. I didn't have big issues with the safety system. Also growing up, there was enough food, money was tight, a lot of TV dinners. I grew very fond of Swanson's little chickeny things. But anyway, but it was okay. And I could get, I could accomplish things. All right, good. I didn't have big issues in the satisfaction, the mouse. My mouse was fed. But my little inner monkey, You know, I was a total dork as a kid. I also have a very late birthday, and I skipped a grade, so I was very young going through school, and I had a lot of experiences of being left out, unwanted, rejected, as my dad, who grew up on a ranch in North Dakota, put it, feeling like the run of the litter, all right? And so that was where my issues were. And so what was useful for me was to look for those experiences that were targeted antidotes, as it were, that really filled the hole in my heart. So I began looking for them in a very genuine way, you know. My issues were not around feeling safer or more satisfied. My issues were around feeling more included and wanted and seen. So when there were authentic opportunities for that, people would say, "Hey, Hanson, let's get some pizza." Or maybe some girl would smile at me, or two girls would smile at me. Oh my God, that was a very special day. You know, I would try to recognize it and feel it. You know, I wasn't revealing it, of course. I was super cool, like, everything's fine here. But inside, I was like, yeah, this one's good, you know? It's like when, you know, you're hungry for a certain kind of food, and then life puts it before you, or you have the opportunity to create it, to make the meal for the supply, the psychological supply you need. When life puts that meal before you, most of us bring a tiny little toothpick to eat it. Instead, bring a big spoon. So maybe that's my final takeaway to you. As you go through life and that good stuff's laid before you, bring a big spoon. So, thank you very much. Thank you.